So when the Sun gets further into Gemini, it squares Neptune. But I think Mercury sneaks up and does that beforehand. Let me check here on my astrological chimeras that I can't even understand yet. But point being, the gaslighting in the air, it's going to be interesting to see how it manifests in each and everyone's life. For me, it's the ongoing, well, my Venus is still moving, still kind of experiencing the Neptune opposition, which is like, good heavens. Thank God it's just an opposition. It is an opposition. It's very important to know that that's very different than the square, and the square is different than a trine. There's a lot of astrologies on YouTube that just blend it together, and it's like, I think that they have a lack of depth. That's what it is, and they don't get into the detail of, well, squares are hard. There's a hard side. It's the more interesting side, because it turns out that people with heavy-duty squares, if they're doing it right, well, they're just hard to knock when they learn their lessons, and they're sturdy in their foundation with all of that, and you can't budge them, if they're really dealing, like, especially with like Saturn squares Mars or something like that physically, they have a discipline. So thanks for listening to that. This is June, and so we're going to have a new moon in Gemini, so that's also, when on the new moon, it's going to square Neptune, the new moon does. And then shortly after that, let's see, it's shortly after that, just like 4 or 5 days. I mean, it's just, you would say it is happening right when the new moon is happening, but it happens exact on the 19th. So the new moon is on Friday. Is that right? Huh. Boy, yeah, it's on Friday here. Well, it's Saturday. So yeah, it's pretty much the same time that the Sun will be square to Neptune. My Venus is involved, so I would talk about that. It's strange gaslighting energy, especially because Gemini is Mercury ruled. We went through this last year with, it was a lot of strange stuff, particularly I think it was with Mars, and men in particularly were gaslighting. I mean, just moving into this, like, oh wow, look at that. There's one falling subject to their own mind right there, and they can't help but the gaslight. You can notice that. It's like, okay, that's just somebody. What goes on there? It's sad, but so they have their alternate reality. Anyway, it's with new moon square Neptune and Sun square Neptune. Very trippy time. Yeah, watch out for the deception and the wool pulling over the eyes, and of course the ghosting reality, right? And the way that narcissists are always up to just lying, and you can care less, because after a while it's a child. It's like, well, that doesn't pertain to my life. That's the way you live your life. Ghosting and creating a disconnection and stuff. It has nothing to do with me. See, there's where we're always, see, I'm staggering with that. You don't care. That's just the narcissist for you. They have that to work on. Try not to enmesh so much and invest so much, right? Always know that they're like, if their immaturity is there. I'm here to say that more so than what Sam Vaknin and Richard Grannon would state, other really good sources of information, way better than I have, about narcissism and everything. Sam Vaknin is very number one. I consider Sam Vaknin equal to an Osho. If you know who Osho, or Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh is his real name. Controversial only because you have to. There's a whole society out there that doesn't want you to know about the true nature of the mind and what would really save. See, this is where Sam Vaknin kind of fails us, is he never talks about, well, meditation. He did on the last video I'll post right here that talked about, he was pointing at it, but really he is he just needs to link that up, I guess, and do more meditating himself. I don't know. He has his own way, and I think that is the best way, right? Gosh, so that's why I say he's just equivalent to if Osho was still living. I mean, there he is right there. I mean, a really world-renowned person, and of course, dangerous. Therefore, he's a dangerous person. Like Osho and like Jesus was, like anybody who would have the cure plus pointing at the disease, which is the mind. Getting back to the mind, babes, when the sun in Gemini is ruled by the mind, which is Mercury. So when the moon goes new in Gemini, it's square to Neptune, which is it's a square. If we can get through all of the illusion and the blindsiding, we gain a more spiritual way of being and perception. But the squares are hard. Do we ever get it? Is it all hindsight, or do we get it at all? Do we ever see that we have been just hit with another gaslight and a lie? And like I said before, well, do we care? We have our lives. That's the way they live, and that creates the disconnect that you feel, and it's frustrating and everything, sure. But you have your life, and what's more solid and true is always the best for everybody, and especially for you. But for anybody who wants to stay healthy, I mean, we understand that much. But so getting back to this Neptune, I feel it because I have it's still square my Venus by 4 degrees, even though it's a lesson in this. It's like, oh, in this gaslighting society, in the narcissistic, the way that people, their minds are like their blinders, right? And then so now it's really more complex if you talk about just the pure immaturity that doesn't see how the depth of things, the details of what's going on beyond the mind. Okay, because what's funny is that love always wins. If there is that undertow there, the narcissist can't win. Love always wins. The narcissist is going to change around love, or you bet is going to be destroyed somehow. It's going to experience. Sam Vaknin talks about it. It could be a huge misunderstanding. Basically, that's all. And then there's mortification and all kinds of things that will go on. And it's hard to tell who's who after this. Oh boy. But stick to reality. The reality of it. Make sure you're on your side, because otherwise it's always an undermine of you if you don't understand. Like, hey, put you first. It's not selfish. That's the only way that you're going to make yourself of any use to anybody in the long run, like at any time, for any amount of time, like, because most of the time we don't have that, and it's like, well, when we have a little bit of it together, we're like, here, yes, share, a little bit more before who are you? Yeah. Did it work? I don't know. I can't see. Thanks for listening. I'm talking about, how it's going to aspect me. There's a lot of, it's just weird. It's like all of a sudden, talk about the rose-colored glasses on that. That's what the Neptune-Venus opposition has been for me. Epic thing. Whoever, it's just a special thing where, let alone that I'm 23 Virgo. The Jupiter conjunct Neptune last year, everybody experienced it in Pisces. It happened to just exactly oppose my 23 Virgo, Venus. And I'm falling into, it's on record here how I'm not fully out of it either. I'm like, okay, but I feel better. I feel a little better. I feel a little, what I've been doing is eating food, It's like I was just gonna say, it's just like taking LSD. I have got to get the fuck out of this bad trip. It's a good trip now, isn't it? Yes, you're back to Fantasyland, which is life and the dream itself. Really? Yes. Continue dreaming. That's what we would say if all of humanity, and they are, because Neptune is at the late degrees of Pisces. Talk about a cup getting full, and then everybody, not just me, babe, but I am humanity, so listen up. Neptune going into Aries. Let's look at what year that is, if I ever can, with this darn thing. I mean, I think it's in the year 2026. It's just why it's a big time we're in right now. If you're going to be able to manage to keep breathing throughout the next decade, we're going to see a lot of planets. We're going to see Pluto. Well, Saturn just went into Pisces. That's kicking things off, but Pluto is major, going into Aquarius. Um, in 2026, Uranus will go into Gemini, which that's huge for all of my generation, the Pluto and Libra generation. That's what I call the Libra generation. And then Neptune is going to be going into, that's all these later planets shifting, going into Aries, just resetting all of humanity. And talk about the spiritual, the psychedelic, really tapping the mind. What is that? Excuse me, but I'll keep. I don't really want to like plug into my back of my brain like they really want. The next step, is to do that, and then I won't have to explain with my ba. You just plug in, and oh, there's Shauna. Can't wait. Update. You know what I mean? Update, upgrade.